So if you wanted to make your own textures rather than download something from the Unity Asset Store, for example, um, I can show you what it takes. It's just going to take a little bit of doing in Google Image Search and Photoshop. So, for example, just to get the principle out of the way, a texture is something that has to be repeatable. So this rainbow is repeatable in that it loops, right? Like once it gets through RGB, like Roy G. Biv, it wraps back around again. So we get to this light purple, and then the red starts over again. But it also loops side to side, right? So if I look at this in Photoshop, the red on the left will loop and match exactly with the red on the right because it's horizontal stripes, right? So that one's going to tile easily. It'll repeat the rainbow over and over again vertically. It'll just continue the horizontal stripes left to right. But the real trick is that some images are not this simple. It's like, oh, I just want like the lumpy plaster on my wall, but that's not going to repeat at the edges naturally. So let me show you what we can do in Photoshop to make that happen. So we're going to make a new blank Photoshop file. I will go File, New, and then we're going to use 1024 pixels by 1024 as our resolution. This is a fairly standard resolution for textures. And then we're going to jump out to Google Image Search. I've just searched plaster, and I'm looking for something like this that's sort of like a flat image. I'm going to copy it and then paste it into Photoshop. Okay, so far so good. This may even be a bit big for my canvas. It's high resolution, so I could Control T to shrink it down and get more of the image in. And then I'm gonna hit check mark. Okay, so now this already starts to look like a texture, but the trick is it doesn't tile. That is to say, the left side doesn't wrap nicely into the right side or the top to the bottom. It's just a random picture of texture. So we need to make it tile perfectly. We're going to do that by going up to Filter, and then Other, and then Offset. So what offset does is offset each side of the image by a certain number of pixels. So this whole image, remember, was 1024. So I want to offset each side halfway, if that makes sense. I'm trying to move the edges to the center. So I'm going to do half of 1024, which is 512. And I'm going to do that in both directions. So what I've got now is the edges used to be at the edges are now pushed to the middle. And so if I hit OK, I can see the way this isn't wrapping successfully. So we can use a couple of tools to fix that and to make these hard lines go away. We're going to go into our three dots here and look for more tools. The easiest solution that sometimes works is the spot healing brush. The spot healing brush is a brush size that you can just paint an area and say this part should be fixed. And it tries to base things on what's next door to it to fix it. So I'm just going to paint straight down this line. And honestly, it's not that bad. As you zoom in, you can sort of see a little blurriness, a little artifacting. But that gets us a lot of the way there just from that. So if you want to do more, then I would encourage the use of the clone stamp tool. And again, how the clone stamp tool works, which you might have saw back when we were removing tripods in 360 video, is that you hold a button on your keyboard. On PC, it's Alt. On Mac, I want to say it's Option, or it might be Command. It's whichever one turns your mouse cursor into a target. And so you click on an area with that target, and then you let go of the modifier key, and now your paintbrush has become that area you selected. It's a clone of that area, and we use it as a stamp to paint with. So you can sort of paint over this line, and you can clone other areas and try to make this change more subtle. You can change the hardness of your brush so the edges of it are pretty fuzzy, pretty feathered, and that way we're less likely to see where the edges are. And one thing I notice about this texture is that the one corner has a lot more shadow than the others. So this one in particular, I might try to go in and like make that change more subtle so that we don't have this corner that seems to be so like checkerboarded with shadow. It'll be a little bit mixed in with some of the other colors. And as we get there, then if I say this is good, I can offset again, which brings me back to the original, and I can check, did I accidentally make any lines on the edges, you know, this time when I was working. And it looks like maybe down here I kind of did. So, you know, this is a little bit of an iterative process. We go back and forth a little bit and try to fix our mistakes if we've made any. So this here is creating an edge that I don't like. But we go back and forth a little bit until we get tiling effect that I buy. So yeah, I think I like that. And now I'm going to File, Export, Quick Export as a PNG. And I can export directly into my Unity project, which mine is called Tutorial Project 1. And under Assets and Textures, I will call this one Plaster and hit Save. And then when I go back into Unity, like magic, I've got a plaster texture right here. And instead of this tile for our house, let's go into our materials, open up brown mat, and I'm going to put the plaster material in the albedo instead. Interestingly, we still have the normal map from tile applied. And so check this out. It's the visual texture of the plaster with the normal map of the tile, which is actually kind of cool, but not intended. So if we want to get rid of the normal map, we click the tiny little circle next to the word normal map and choose none. And so now here is that plaster texture that we made, but its albedo is still brown. And if you want to see it just as it was in Photoshop, we would make the albedo white. So you can see there is a little bit of, you know, repeated tiling to it, and that's that one shadowy corner kind of getting repeated over and over again. But one thing that's nice about tiling, you can change the size of the tiling. So if we want this to repeat less often, you know, we could go to like 1, 1. Maybe that's too big. Maybe we'll try 3, 3. And just see like where does it land in a way that's kind of believable. If you needed to fix this further, you know, if you were like, oh, I still don't like, I see a hard edge here that I'd like to change, you can go back to Photoshop and iterate on this and try to find like where is that edge happening? How can I make this change? You know, so here I would think this is the source of my problem. So I'm going to try to get rid of more of the shadow, and then I will check in my offset. I think we're good. So I'm going to export as PNG right over top of plaster, overwrite it, and then when I go back into Unity, I'll see the new version. And so you can just kind of work back and forth that way until you get the texture effect that you want. So then you might say, okay, I've made a texture, but what about the normal map? And I want to point you to, there's a free normal map generator tool online. I can post the link in our Blackboard. And so what you do with this is you can drag and drop your file directly onto the website. And then this is the original, this is the normal map, and this is the effect on a 3D object in an effort to kind of show you if it's working. You can choose different shapes of objects that maybe will help you get a sense of, you know, are you applying this to a curved object or to a plane or something like that. And you have some sliders to give a sense of, like, you know, strength is going to make each of the bumps much more bumpier. Much more bumpier. You can sort of set where the middle is. You can set how sharp or soft these height changes are. And after making these adjustments, you then click download. So this normal map should be put in the same folder as the rest of your stuff. And let's add plaster to the front of this file name with an underscore. Now when we go back to Unity, we have a plaster normal map that we can apply to our material. So we would drag this to the normal map, and now our plaster has depth.